Ladies and gentlemen, there is a fortune waiting for you that was never written in a will. No lawyer holds the documents, no distant relative must die for you to claim it. It exists now tonight, in a place you have abandoned your own imagination. I knew a woman who inherited nothing but assumed everything. She would sit in her cramped apartment and feel the marble floors beneath her feet. She wore no jewels but felt their weight on her fingers. She signed no checks, but wrote them in her mind over and over with the sensation of wealth already spent. 3 months later, a foundation she had never contacted offered her a position managing millions. The inheritance was always hers. She simply stopped refusing it in. Consciousness. You are here tonight because something within you knows there is more. You feel it. You sense it. There is a wealth, a prosperity, a security that should be yours that feels like it was always meant to be yours. Yet it remains just beyond your grasp. You work, you plan, you save, you sacrifice, and still the abundance you long for eludes you. You watch others seem to glide through life with ease, while you struggle for every dollar. You wonder what they know that you do not. You wonder if there is some secret, some hidden knowledge, some key that unlocks the door to prosperity. I am here to tell you that there is, but it is not to what you think. It is not a strategy. It is not a technique. It is not something you do with your hands or your mind or your will. It is something you become in your consciousness. It is a state you occupy. And tonight I am going to reveal to you the principle that old money families have known for generations. A principle so simple, so fundamental, so absolutely true that once you understand it, you will never see wealth the same way again. But first, I must tell you what you have been told about wealth is a lie. You have been taught that prosperity is a reward for hard work, for good behavior, for moral virtue, for fortunate timing. You have been taught to beg reality for scraps, to save, to sacrifice, to strategize, and someday, perhaps if you are good enough, if you work hard enough, if you are lucky enough, you will be granted permission to be comfortable. This is not how wealth works. This is how slavery works. This is how men are kept in bondage to a system that tells them they must earn what is already theirs by divine right. The principle I am about to reveal to you is not new. It is older than banks. It is older than currency. It is older than civilization itself. It is the principle by which all things are made. And it is the principle by which old money families remain wealthy for generations while others, no matter how hard they labor, remain in lack. The principle is this: consciousness is the only reality. Wealth is not a condition to achieve. It is a state to assume. What you are about to discover in this teaching is not a method to get money. I will not tell you to visualize checks falling from the sky or to repeat affirmations in a mirror every morning. I will not give you a list of daily habits or success principles or tips to attract abundance. Those are the tools of men who do not understand the law. They are the distractions that keep you focused on the outer world, on effects, on symptoms, when the cause, the true creative power lies within you, in your own consciousness, in your capacity to assume a state and persist in it. I will give you something far more dangerous and far more true. I will show you how to stop seeking wealth and start being it. I will show you how to occupy the consciousness of wealth so completely, so naturally, so effortlessly, that the outer world has no choice but to reflect to it back to you. This is not manifesting. This is not attraction. This is not positive thinking. This is the ancient mystical truth that I am is the name of God. And whatever you attach to I am, you become. When you say I am poor, you are not describing your condition. You are commanding your reality. You are decreeing poverty into your experience. You are instructing the subconscious mind, which is the womb of all creation, to bring forth poverty in your world. And it does faithfully, impersonally, without question. When you assume I am wealthy, you are not hoping. You are not wishing. You are decreeing. You are commanding. You are instructing that same creative power to bring forth wealth, and it will, it must, for the law is impersonal. It does not judge your worthiness. It does not care about your past or your present circumstances. It cares only about one thing, what you assume to be true. The outer world, everything you see, touch, taste, hear, and experience is nothing more than a mirror of your inner convictions. It is your consciousness pushed out. It is the reflection of your habitual assumptions made visible. Change the inner and the outer must follow, not sometimes, not if. You are lucky, always, without exception. This is law. The reason you have struggled with money is not because you lack opportunity. It is not because you lack intelligence or education or connections. It is not because the economy is bad, or because you were born into the wrong family, or because you missed some critical window of time, the pontis. A reason you have struggled with money is because you have never, not once, truly assumed yourself to be wealthy. You have wished for wealth. You have hoped to it. You have worked for it. You have prayed for it. But you have never occupied the state of wealth in your consciousness. You have never lived in it, moved in it, breathed in it, slept in it. You have stood outside of it, looking in, longing for it, reaching for it, but never claiming it as your own. And until you do, no amount of action will produce wealth that lasts. You will always be chasing something just beyond your reach. You will always be waiting for permission from the outer world, permission that will never come. Because the outer world does not grant permission, it reflects assumption. Old money does not chase. Old money does not beg. Old money does not wait. Old money assumes. And tonight you will learn to do the same. Now let me tell you about the woman I mentioned. Her story will reveal to you the power of assumption in a way that no theory or philosophy ever could. This was a woman in her 50s, and when I met her, she was in what most would call desperate circumstances. She had lost her job. She had no family to fall back upon for support. Her bank account was nearly empty, just a few dollars remaining. Her car was so old, so worn, that it was ready to collapse at any moment. She was behind on her rent. She had no proper clothes to seek employment. And if you know anything about the world, you know that it is not easy for a woman of 55 to find work. Employers look at age and see limitation. They see risk. They see someone to pass over in favor of younger candidates. She had every reason to despair, every reason to accept her circumstances as permanent, every reason to believe that her life would continue in lack, in struggle, in fear. But she had been attending my lectures for nearly a year, and she had heard me speak of the law of assumption. She had heard me say that imagination creates reality. She had heard me say that consciousness is the only creative power. And in her desperation, she decided to test it. She had nothing to lose. At first, she did what most people do. She began imagining herself having everything she needed. She made a mental list. Money for rent, a new car, proper clothing, a good job, food, security, peace of mind. And she tried to imagine each item on the list fulfilled. But the list was so long. The needs were so many, and by the time she finished imagining one thing, her mind was already racing to the next. She found herself exhausted, her imagination scattered in 1,000 directions, and at the end of it all, she was so nervous, so anxious, so overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of what she needed that she could not sleep. This went on for some time. She came to my lectures each week, listening, trying to apply what I taught, but feeling as though she was failing. One evening, I told a story about an artist who had captured not the details of his desire, but the feeling, the word, the essence he had repeated to himself over and over. Isn't it wonderful? And he had felt the joy, the relief, the satisfaction of something marvelous happening in his life. Not tomorrow, not next week, but right now. She heard this, and something shifted within her. She realized she had been scattering her attention across 100 different objects when what she needed to do was occupy a single state. She needed to feel wealthy, not imagine wealth. She needed to feel fulfilled, not list her needs. She needed to enter the consciousness of the wish already granted and live in that consciousness until it became more real to her than her circumstances. So she changed her approach. Instead of thinking of every article she needed, instead of mentally shopping for furniture and clothes and cars, she captured a feeling, a single, simple, powerful feeling. She began to say to herself as she prepared for sleep each night, "Isn't it wonderful? Something marvelous is happening to me now, not in the future, not someday, now." And as she said it, she did not think about what that marvelous thing might be. She did not try to direct the how or the when or the who. She simply felt the way she would feel if something wonderful had already happened. She felt the relief, the joy, the lightness, the excitement. She let that feeling fill her entire being until it was the only thing she was conscious of. And in that state, she fell asleep. She did this night after night, 2 months, 60 nights of falling, asleep in the feeling of something wonderful already happening. And here is what is important for you to understand. During those 2 months, nothing changed in her outer world. Her rent was still overdue. Her car still barely ran. Her bank account still showed a balance that could not support her for more than a few days. The evidence of her senses screamed poverty, lack, limitation. But she did not let the evidence move her. She persisted in her assumption. She lived in the end. She occupied the state of something wonderful already being hers. Let me tell you what happened during those 2 months, because this is where most people fail. During the first, a week, she felt excited. The practice was new. She felt hope rising in her chest. She went to sleep easily in the feeling, but by the second week, doubt began to creep in. Nothing had changed, not one thing. Her landlord was calling. Her car made a terrible sound every time she started it. She received a rejection letter from a job she had applied for, and a voice in her mind whispered, "This isn't working. You're wasting your time. You need to face reality." But she had made a decision. She had committed to the practice. And so she continued, even when it felt foolish, even when her rational mind screamed that she was ignoring her problems. She returned each night to the feeling, "Isn't it wonderful? Something marvelous is happening to me now. And slowly, something began to shift. Not in her outer world, in her inner world. She began to feel lighter. The anxiety that had gripped her for months began to loosen. She found herself smiling for no reason. She felt inexplicably that she was being taken care of. By the fourth week, her outer circumstances had actually worsened. Her car broke down completely. She had to borrow money from a neighbor just to buy food, but something remarkable had happened in her consciousness. She was no longer afraid. She felt deep within herself a certainty that she could not explain. She knew, not hoped, not believed, but knew that something wonderful was on its way, and that knowing sustained her through the darkest moments. This is what I want you to understand. The practice is not about making the outer world change immediately. The practice is about changing you. When you change, when your consciousness shifts, when you truly inhabit a new state, the outer world has no choice but to follow. But you must go through the transformation first. You must become in consciousness the person who lives in the fulfilled state. And that becoming takes persistence. And then in early October, she had a casual encounter with a friend she had not seen in months. They spoke briefly. He mentioned he was about to leave on a trip to New York. She had lived in New York many years before, and they talked about the city for just a few moments. Nothing significant, nothing that would suggest what was about to happen, and then they parted. She completely forgot the conversation. 1 month later, to the day this man appeared at her apartment, he did not call ahead. He simply knocked on her door, and when she opened it, he handed to her a certified check made out in her name for $2,500. She stood there stunned, unable to comprehend what she was seeing. Her name on a check for more money than she had seen in years. And then the story unfolded. During his trip to New York, this casual acquaintance had run into an old friend of hers, a man she had not seen or heard from in more than 25 years. A man who in those 25 years had become extremely wealthy, and for reasons he never fully explained, for reasons he himself may not have fully understood. He decided in that moment to share a portion of his wealth with her. He instructed his attorney to begin sending her monthly checks. Not a loan, not charity, a gift, an income generous enough to cover every necessity of her life and leave much over for comfort, for beauty, for ease, a new car, proper clothes, a spacious apartment, and most importantly, no need to struggle for her daily bread ever again. 2 years of monthly checks followed, and then one day she received a letter from his attorney with legal documents to sign, documents that provided for the continuation of this monthly income for the rest of her natural life. She would never want again. She would never fear again. She was by any measure wealthy. Now you may hear this story and think it would have happened anyway. The man was wealthy. He was generous. She just happened to know him. But I tell you, no, not like this. Not within days of her shift in consciousness. Not when she had not seen this man in a quarter of a century. Not when the bridge of incidents required a chance meeting between two men who had no reason to speak of her. This was not coincidence. This was not luck. This was law. She assumed the state of something wonderful happening. She persisted in that assumption with such fidelity, such feeling, such conviction that her consciousness became saturated with it, and the outer world being nothing more than a reflection of consciousness, had no choice but to conform. It rearranged itself. It brought together the people, the conversations, the impulses, the Decisions that would make her assumption a physical fact, she did not make it, happen. She did not force it. She did not even know the means by which it would come. She simply assumed the end, and the end produced the means. That is the old money principle. Old money does not ask how. Old money does not worry about the path. Old money simply assumes the state and allows the bridge of incidents to unfold. A child born into a wealthy family does not wonder if there will be food on the table. He does not question whether the bills will be paid. He does not lie awake at night fearing poverty. He simply assumes security because security is all he has ever known. It is his natural state, and because it is his natural state, his life reflects it effortlessly. But let me tell you about another person who discovered this truth, because I want you to see that this principle works for anyone who truly applies it. There was a man who came to my lectures always sitting in the front row, always impeccably dressed. His suit was pressed, his shoes were shined, his bearing was that of a successful gentleman. After several weeks of seeing him, I assumed he was a man of means. But one evening he approached me after the lecture, and what he told me astonished me. He had $12 to his name. $12. That was all that stood between him and absolute destitution. He had lost his business in the crash. He had lost his home. He had lost everything except his dignity and his understanding of the law. He told me, "I have been practicing what you teach. I own nothing, but in my imagination I am already the man I wish to be. I dress as that man would dress. I carry myself as that man would carry himself. I feel what that man would feel, and I know without question that the outer world will catch up to my inner conviction." I asked him how he maintained such composure when his circumstances were so dire. He said, "Because I understand that my circumstances are not my reality. They are simply the outpicturing of my former state, my old assumptions. I have changed my state. I live now in a different consciousness. And I know that what I am in consciousness I must become. In fact, so I persist. I maintain the feeling. I refuse to let appearances dictate my inner conviction." Within 90 days, that man had rebuilt his entire life. A former business associate, someone he had not spoken to in years, contacted him with an opportunity. Within 6 months, he was running a successful enterprise. Within a year, he had purchased a home finer than the one he had lost. I saw him recently, many years later, and his prosperity has only grown. But what struck me most was not his wealth. It was his calm, his certainty, his absolute knowing that he is the operant power in his own life. This man understood something that most people never grasp. You do not wait for circumstances to change before you assume the state. You assume the state, and the circumstances change. You do not dress well after you become successful. You dress well because you have assumed success in consciousness. You do not feel abundant after money arrives. You feel abundant now, and money arrives because you are abundant in consciousness. You were not born into that assumption, but you can claim it tonight. You can occupy the consciousness of wealth right now, in this moment, regardless of what your bank account says, regardless of what your job pays, regardless of what the economy is doing. You can enter the state, and once you enter it and persist in it, the outer world will have no choice but to catch up. Let me tell you another story. This one involves a man, a banking executive who came to me several years ago. He was intelligent, educated, well-dressed, competent at his work. By all outward appearances, he was doing well. But inside, he was deeply troubled. He had been with the same bank for many years, working his way up through the ranks, expecting that his loyalty and his skill would eventually be rewarded with advancement. But when he finally approached his superiors about a promotion, about a raise, about any indication that his future held growth, they told him frankly that there would be no major improvement. They intimated that if he was dissatisfied, he could seek employment elsewhere. But they made it clear in this institution he had reached his ceiling. This shook. He had built his life around this job, around this trajectory, around the belief that if he worked hard and waited long enough, security would come. He had a family. He had children he wanted to send to good schools to provide for, to give a life of comfort and opportunity. And on his current income, with no prospect of increase, he could not do it. He felt trapped. He felt betrayed. He felt a rising tide of anxiety that kept him awake at night, that made him irritable during the day, that drained the joy from his life. When he came to me, he confided what he truly wanted. He did not want to be a millionaire. He did not want extravagant wealth. He simply wanted enough. Enough to maintain his home comfortably, enough to educate his children properly, enough to feel secure, and more than that, he wanted to do work that he loved. He told me that the kind of position he desired more than anything in the world was one in which he managed the investment funds of a Goldermund, large institution, a foundation, a university, something with scope and meaning and stability. I listened to him. I let him speak until he had emptied himself of all his worry, all his frustration, all his longing. And then I said to him, "What I am saying to you now, your present situation is only a manifestation of your concept of yourself. If you want to change the circumstances in which you find yourself, you must change your concept. You must assume yourself to be the man you want to be. And you must persist in that assumption until it hardens into fact." He looked at me uncertain. "How do I do that?" he asked. I told him to follow a very simple procedure every night before he fell asleep. I told him to imagine that he was retiring at the end of one of the most important and successful days of his life, not imagining the day itself, not rehearsing an interview or a meeting or a conversation, simply feeling the way he would feel at the end of such a day. I told him to imagine that he had closed a deal that very day to join exactly the kind of organization he yearned to be, within exactly the capacity he desired. If you succeed in filling your mind with this feeling, I said, you will experience a definite sense of relief. In this mood, your uneasiness and discontent will be a thing of the past. You will feel the contentment that comes with the fulfillment of desire. I assured him that, if he did this faithfully, without wavering, he would inevitably get the kind of position he wanted. This was the first week of December, and night after night, without exception, he followed this procedure. He did not skip a night. He did not allow doubt to creep in. He did not check the outer world for signs of progress. He simply fell asleep each night in the feeling of his wish already fulfilled. He felt the relief. He felt the satisfaction. He felt the deep, quiet joy of being exactly where he wanted to be, and he let that feeling carry him into sleep. But let me tell you what happened during those weeks, because this will help you understand what you must do when you practice this yourself. The first few nights were easy. He felt hopeful. He felt excited. The imaginal act felt vivid and real. But after about 10 days, something happened. He went to work, and his boss made a comment that reminded him of his situation. He felt the old anxiety creeping back in. He felt the walls closing in. And that night, as he tried to do his practice, his mind kept wandering to his problems. How will this happen? Where will this opportunity come from? What if I'm wasting my time? He told me later that this was his crisis moment. He could either give in to the doubt and abandon the practice, or he could persist despite the doubt. He chose to persist. He said to himself, I don't know how this will happen. I don't need to know how. My only job is to occupy the state, to feel it, to live in it, to be it in consciousness. The how is not my concern. The how is the business of the law. So he continued, and some nights were harder than others. Some nights the feeling came easily. Other nights he had to work, to capture it, to hold it, to sustain it. But he never gave up. He never let the outer world convince him to abandon his inner conviction. And what he discovered was remarkable. Even though nothing had changed in his job, even though he had received no indication that anything was different, he began to feel different. He began to move through his days with a new confidence. He began to make decisions from a place of security rather than fear. He began to see himself differently. This is what I want you to understand about the practice. The transformation happens first within you. Before anything changes in your outer world, you change. Your energy changes. Your posture changes. Your voice changes. The way you carry yourself changes. You begin to move through the world as the person you have been assuming yourself to be in imagination. And this inner change creates the outer change. The banking executive told me that around the 4th week of his practice, something shifted. He walked into the bank one morning and realized he no longer felt trapped. He no longer felt anxious. He no longer felt like he was waiting for someone else to give him permission to live the life he desired. He felt deep within himself that he was already the man he wanted to be. The outer circumstances had not changed. The position had not appeared, but he had changed. And that change was more real, more powerful, more significant than any outer circumstance could ever be. He said to me, I realized that even if the position never came, I would still be all right because I had found something more valuable than any job. I had found myself. I had found my own creative power. I had found the God within me that creates my reality. And I find that once you know that, no outer circumstance can ever diminish you again. But the position did come. It came because he had become the man who belonged in that position. His assumption had created the man, and the man attracted the circumstances. This is always how it works. You do not get the thing and then become the person. You become the person and then the thing appears. The being precedes the having. The consciousness creates the condition. And it was this inner change, this transformation in his consciousness that prepared the way for the outer opportunity. By the time the phone call came in, February, he was already the man who belonged in that position. Not just in his imagination, in his very being. He had become it in consciousness so completely that when the opportunity appeared, it felt natural. It felt right. It felt like he was simply stepping into a role he had already been occupying inwardly. I tell you this because you need to understand that the practice is not just about creating outer results. It is about transforming yourself. It is about becoming in consciousness the person you desire to be in the world. And when you become that person inwardly, the outer world must reflect it. It has no choice. The outer is always the servant of the inner. The shadow must follow the form. In early February, a director of one of the wealthiest foundations in the world contacted him. Not through a job posting, not through a recruiter. The man simply called him and asked if he would be interested in joining the foundation in an executive capacity, handling investments. It was the exact position he had imagined, the exact role, the exact type of organization, and the salary was substantially higher than anything he had hoped for. He accepted. And today, years later, he is still there, thriving, advancing, living the life he once only dreamed of. Do you see what happened? He did not send out resumes. He did not network. He did not force an opportunity. He simply occupied a state of consciousness, and the state produced the means. The bridge of incidents unfolded naturally, effortlessly, inevitably. A man he had never met felt an impulse to call him. A position that seemed out of reach opened before him. His assumption dictated the events. This is how wealth works for those who understand the law. You do not chase the position. You do not beg for the opportunity. You assume the consciousness of already having it, and the position finds you. The opportunity seeks you out. The wealth flows to you as naturally as water flows downhill, because you are no longer resisting it. You are no longer standing outside of it, longing for it. You are in it. You are. Now, I want you to understand something that most people miss. Wealth is not a thing. It is not money in a bank. It is not property. It is not possessions. These are symbols. These are effects. These are shadows cast by an inner condition. Wealth is a state of consciousness. It is a habitual feeling of abundance, of security, of naturalness and prosperity. Old money. Families are not wealthy because they have money. They have money because they are wealthy in consciousness. Think about this. A child born into an old money family is raised in a world where wealth is as natural as breathing. He does not marvel at luxury. He does not feel grateful for marble floors or trust funds or private schools. He simply is. That is his world. That is his normal. He has never known anything else. And because wealth is his natural state, his life continues to reflect it. He does not have to work at being wealthy. He does not have to attract it, or manifest it, or affirm it. He simply is. And the afferent being produces the having. Let me give you a concrete example of this principle. In action, I knew two young men who graduated from the same university in the same year with the same degree. One came from wealth. His family had been prosperous for generations. The other came from poverty. His family had struggled for as long as anyone could. Remember, both were intelligent, both were capable, both entered the same field of work, but within 5 years, their lives had diverged dramatically. The young man from wealth was thriving. He had advanced quickly in his career, not because he worked harder, but because he moved through the world with a certainty that doors would open for and him. When opportunities arose, he took them without hesitation. When risks presented themselves, he embraced them without fear. He spoke to executives and investors with the ease of an equal because in his consciousness, he was their equal. He never doubted his belonging. He never questioned his worthiness. He simply assumed success and success came. The young man from poverty, on the other hand, was struggling. Despite his intelligence and capability, he could not seem to advance. He hesitated when opportunities arose. He feared risks. He spoke to executives and investors with deference, with the consciousness of someone who did not quite belong. He worked longer, hours, than his counterpart. He sacrificed more. He tried harder. But his trying came from a consciousness of lack, of needing to prove himself, of believing he was not yet enough. And that consciousness, that inner assumption, created his outer experience. I watched these two men over the years, and what became clear to me was this: the difference between them was not intelligence or effort or even opportunity. The difference was consciousness. One moved through the world as someone who belonged to prosperity. The other moved through the world as someone trying to earn it. One assumed wealth, the other pursued it. And the law, being impersonal, reflected back to each man exactly what he assumed about himself. Now you might say, but the wealthy man had advantages. He had connections. He had his family's name. And yes, these things existed in his outer world. But why did he have them? Because his family for generations had occupied the consciousness of wealth. They had passed down not just money but assumption. They had passed down not just property but identity. They had raised their children to see themselves as wealthy, to feel wealth as their natural state, to expect prosperity as their birthright. And that consciousness, transmitted from parent to child, created the outer advantages that we see. The poor man's family had done the same. But in reverse, they had transmitted the consciousness of struggle, of limitation, of never quite having enough. They had raised their children to work hard, to be grateful for small mercies, to never expect too much from life. And that consciousness, just as faithfully transmitted, created the outer disadvantages that we see. But here is the liberating truth. You can change your consciousness. You can reject the assumption you inherited and claim a new one. You were not born into wealth consciousness, but you can occupy it tonight. You can assume the feeling of abundance, the naturalness of prosperity, the certainty of provision. You can move through your world as someone who belongs to wealth. And when you do, when you persist in that assumption, the outer world will have no choice but to reflect it. You, on the other hand, were likely raised to see wealth as other, as distant, as something earned through virtue or granted through luck. You were taught to admire it from afar, to see yourself as separate from it, to believe that you must become worthy of it before you can have it. This is the consciousness of poverty. It does not matter how much money you acquire while in this state. If your inner condition is one of lack, you will lose it or live in constant fear of losing it. I have seen lottery winners return to poverty within a few years. I have seen people inherit fortunes and squander them. I have seen men work their entire lives to accumulate wealth only to feel more anxious, more fearful, more burdened than they did when they had nothing. Why? Because they never changed their state. They remained beggars in consciousness and reality, conformed to the inner, not the outer. To become truly wealthy, you must stop seeing wealth as a destination and start occupying it as your natural state. You must feel wealthy before a single dollar changes hands. This is not pretending. This is not fake it till you make it. This is not lying to yourself. This is the mystical act of assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled. And in that assumption, you become the thing itself. Let me say this again because it is the key to everything. Assumption is not hoping. Assumption is not wishing. Assumption is not wanting. Assumption is occupying a state so completely that you think from it rather than of it. When you think of wealth, you are separate from it. You are here, and wealth is there, and you are imagining yourself traveling toward it. When you think from wealth, you are it. You are standing in it. You are moving through your day as though it is already true. You are not rehearsing the getting. You are rehearsing the being. Let me illustrate this with an example that will make it absolutely clear. Imagine you want to live in Paris. If you think of Paris, you might imagine the Eiffel Tower, the cafes, the Seine River. You see yourself. As a tourist visiting these places, you long to be there. You plan how you might, one day, afford to go there. You dream about it. This is thinking of Paris. You are here, and Paris is there, and you are separate from it. But if you think from Paris, something entirely different happens. You imagine yourself waking up in your apartment in Paris. You make coffee in your Parisian kitchen. You walk out your door and down the familiar streets to your favorite cafe. You greet the barista who knows your order by heart. You sit at your usual table and watch the people pass by. You are not visiting. You are not touring. You are living there. You belong there. This is your reality. This is thinking from Paris. You have assumed the state of living in Paris, and you are experiencing it from within. The same principle applies to wealth. Most people think of wealth. They imagine having money. They picture themselves buying things. They fantasize about what they would do if they were rich, but they remain separate from it. They are always looking at wealth from the outside, longing for it, reaching for it, but never occupying it. But when you think from wealth, you inhabit it. You move through your mental world as a wealthy person moves through the physical world. You make decisions from abundance. You give from overflow. You rest in security. You do not observe wealth. You experience it. You are it. And this is what creates the manifestation. Not the longing for wealth, but the being of wealth in consciousness. I knew a woman who wanted to live in a beautiful home by the ocean. For years, she thought of this home. She would drive by oceanfront properties and admire them. She would cut pictures from magazines and create vision boards. She would imagine herself living there someday. But nothing changed. The home remained a distant dream. Then she learned this principle. She stopped thinking of the home and started thinking from it. Every night before sleep, she would imagine she was already to living there. She would hear the waves outside her window. She would feel the ocean breeze coming through her bedroom. She would walk through the rooms of her home, touching the furniture, looking out at the view. She was not observing from outside. She was experiencing from within. She had assumed the state of living there. Within 8 months, through a series of events that seemed miraculous to everyone around her, she was living in that home. Not a home like it, the actual home she had been imagining. The owner, who had no intention of selling, felt a sudden impulse to offer it to her at terms she could afford. Was it coincidence? No, it was law. She had assumed the state, and the state produced the circumstances. This is the difference between daydreaming and creation. A man who thinks of being wealthy imagines himself in a future state, rich someday, secure, eventually. He is always traveling toward it, never arriving. He is perpetually in motion, perpetually longing, perpetually outside. A man who thinks from wealth imagines himself already there. He feels the naturalness of it. He moves through his mental world as a wealthy man moves through the physical world with ease, with calm, with the quiet confidence of someone who belongs. This is how old money operates. They do not imagine becoming wealthy. They simply are. And you must do the same. You must stop thinking of your desire and start thinking from it. You must occupy the state. You must inhabit it. You must live in it now, in your imagination, with such vividness, with such sensory richness, with such emotional conviction that when you return to the outer world, you are shocked that it has not yet conformed. That shock, that inner knowing that you have been somewhere more real than the physical, that is the sign. That is when you know you have truly assumed. But here is where most people stumble. They assume for a moment. They feel it for a night, perhaps two, and then they open their eyes. They look at their circumstances, and they say, well, nothing has changed. I guess it didn't work. And in way? That moment, they drop the state. They return to their old assumptions. They re-inhabit the consciousness of lack, and they wonder why their life does not transform. The law does not reward effort. The law does not reward good intentions. The law does not even reward temporary assumption. The law reflects your habitual state. It reflects the consciousness you occupy most consistently, most persistently, most naturally. If you assume wealth for 5 minutes and then spend the rest of your day assuming poverty, which state do you think will be reflected in your world? This is why old money remains old money. It is not because they are smarter. It is not because they are more deserving. It is because their assumption of wealth is not something they do. It is something they are. It is woven into their identity so deeply that they could not shake it if they tried. They were born into it. They breathed it in with their first breath. They absorbed it from their parents, their homes, their education, their entire environment. Wealth is not their goal. It is their ground. It is the foundation upon which they stand. You must create that same foundation within yourself, not by inheriting it, not by earning it, but by assuming it, by occupying the state of wealth so consistently, so persistently, so faithfully that it becomes your new normal. And when it becomes your new normal, the outer world will have no choice but to reflect it. Now let me address something that will trouble many of you. I have said that the law does not reward effort. I have said that wealth is not earned. This will seem to contradict everything you have been taught. You have been told your entire life that hard work brings reward, that sacrifice brings blessing, that if you just try hard enough, if you just push long enough, if you just endure enough, prosperity will come. And I am telling you that this is a lie. I am not saying that action is unimportant. I am not saying you should sit idly and do nothing. What I am saying is that your action does not create your reality. Your action expresses your state. Your state creates your reality. A man who assumes he is wealthy will take wealthy actions effortlessly. He will make decisions from a consciousness of abundance. He will see opportunities that a man in the consciousness of lack cannot see. He will move through the world with a calm assurance that opens doors. His actions are the fruit of his state, not the cause of it. A man who assumes he is poor, on the other hand, will sabotage every opportunity without even realizing it. He will make decisions from fear, from scarcity, from the belief that he must hoard and protect and fight for every crumb. He will work himself to exhaustion and still see no progress because his actions are rooted in lack. And lack produces lack. No amount of effort can overcome the creative power of assumption. Change the assumption and the actions change, the results change. The entire trajectory of life changes. This is why I tell you, stop trying to earn wealth. Stop trying to attract it. Stop trying to manifest it through effort or discipline or positive thinking. Instead, assume it. Occupy the state. Live in the end. Feel yourself to be wealthy now in this moment. And let that feeling guide your every thought, your every word, your every action. You will find that the right actions come naturally, effortlessly, joyfully. You will not have to force yourself to do what needs to be done. You will simply do it because it is the natural expression of who you have become in consciousness. Let me tell you what happens when you truly assume wealth. You stop the frantic seeking. You stop the anxious planning. You stop checking your bank balance 10 times a day, as though the number on the screen has the power to define you. You stop comparing yourself to others. You stop feeling jealous of those who have more or superior to those who have less. You stop living in a perpetual state of not enough, and you enter a state of calm, of ease, of quiet knowing. The consciousness of wealth is still. It does not chase because it does not need to. Wealth is already here. A wealthy man does not run after money. He does not beg for opportunities. He does not desperately grasp at every possibility. He moves with ease because he knows deep in his being that he is provided for. That is the state you must occupy. I once observed a businessman at a negotiation. He was a man of considerable wealth, though you would not know it from his demeanor. He sat quietly while others argued and postured. He did not interrupt. He did not insist. He did not demand. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, his words were few, and his position was clear. He stated what he wanted and then fell silent. And remarkably, the entire room bent toward his will. Why? Because he moved from a consciousness of sufficiency. He had no need to prove himself, no desperation to make the deal work, no fear of walking away. His calm certainty was more powerful than all the arguing and posturing combined. I watched another man in a similar situation, a man who desperately needed the deal to close. He spoke too much. He argued too forcefully. He conceded too quickly when challenged. His every word, his every gesture, broadcast his need, and the others in the room, sensing his desperation, took advantage of it. He left with far less than he had hoped for, not because he lacked skill or intelligence, but because he lacked the consciousness of abundance. He operated from fear, and fear repels what it seeks. This is true in every area of life. The woman who desperately seeks love repels it with her neediness. The man who anxiously pursues success sabotages it with his fear. But the woman who rests in her own completeness attracts love effortlessly. The man who moves through his career with quiet confidence rises naturally to positions of influence, not because they are better people, not because they work harder, but because their consciousness is aligned with what they desire. Old money understands this instinctively. Watch a person from an old money family enter a room. They do not announce themselves. They do not demand attention. They simply are. And yet somehow the room arranges itself around them. People are drawn to them. Opportunities flow to them, not because they chase, but because they rest in their own sufficiency. They do not need anything from anyone. And paradoxically, everything comes to them. This is the paradox that will test you. To assume wealth, you must stop acting as though you lack it. You must stop the desperate seeking, the anxious planning, the mental spirals about how it will come. You must rest in the state of already having it. This does not mean you become passive. It does not mean you stop taking action. It means you act from fulfillment rather than from need. Old money moves with ease because it never doubts its security. When a wealthy man makes an investment, he does not do so out of desperation. He does so because it feels natural, because it aligns with his vision, because he can afford to take the risk. When he gives freely because he knows there is more. Where that came from. When he rests fully because he is not haunted by the fear that he must always be doing more, striving more, proving more. You must cultivate that same ease, not after the money comes. Now you must feel the calm of knowing you are provided for. You must feel the relief of already being secure. And when you occupy that state, the money will come, not because you forced it, not because you worked yourself into the ground for it, but because you became the consciousness that wealth naturally inhabits. But I must warn you, the barrier to wealth is not external. It is not the economy. It is not your job. It is not your education or your circumstances or even your past. The barrier is your own disbelief. You do not have a money problem. You have a consciousness problem. The reason you are not wealthy is not because wealth is unavailable to you. It is because you do not believe you are wealthy. You reject the state in your imagination even as you long for it in your mind. Let me show you exactly how this works in everyday life. You wake up in the morning and immediately check your bank balance on your phone. The number you see is lower than you hoped. Your stomach tightens. A wave of anxiety washes over you. And in that moment, in that reaction, you have just decreed your poverty for another day. You have looked at the evidence of your past assumptions and used it to reinforce your current assumption. The balance is low because you have been assuming lack. But instead of recognizing this and assuming wealth, you react with fear and assume more lack. Or you go to the store and see something you want. Before you even consider whether you truly want it or need it, your first thought is, I can't afford that. Those 4 words are a command to your subconscious mind. They are a decree. They are an assumption. And your subconscious being the faithful servant that it is says, as you have decreed, so shall it be. And it ensures that you continue to experience not being able to afford things, or you sit with friends and they talk about their vacations, their purchases, their plans, and you smile and nod, but inside you feel the familiar ache of comparison. You think, I wish I could do that. I wish I had what they have. Someday, maybe, if I work hard enough, if I'm lucky enough, I might be able to afford a life like that. And in that moment, you have placed yourself outside of wealth. You have made it something other, something distant, something that belongs to them, but not to you. You have assumed separation, and separation from wealth is poverty. Or you lie in bed at night unable to sleep because you are worried about bills. You run through the numbers in your mind. You calculate what you owe and what you have. The math doesn't work out. You imagine the phone, calls from creditors. You imagine the notices. You imagine the worst. And as you lie there, rehearsing disaster in your imagination, you are creating it. You are not planning for the future. You are creating the future. Every worried thought is a seed planted. Every fearful image is an instruction to your subconscious, and the harvest will reflect exactly what you have planted. This is how most people live. They use their imagination against themselves. They rehearse lack, worry about scarcity, assume poverty, and then wonder why their lives reflect these very things. They do not understand that they are the creators of their own experience. They believe themselves to be victims of circumstance, when in truth they are the creators of circumstance. Every time you check your bank account and react with fear, you are reaffirming poverty. Every time you say, "I can't afford that," you are commanding lack. Every time you imagine worst-case financial scenarios, being evicted, being unable to pay bills, being judged by others for your lack, you are rehearsing poverty in your consciousness. And the law being impersonal, being faithful, being absolute, produces exactly what you rehearse. Let me tell you about a man I knew who broke this pattern. He was deep in debt. His credit cards were maxed. His bills were overdue. Every logical indicator suggested he was heading toward financial ruin. But he made a decision. He decided he would no longer rehearse poverty. He would no longer check his balance in fear. He would no longer imagine worst-case scenarios. Instead, he would assume wealth every morning. Instead of checking his bank balance, he would close his eyes and imagine seeing an abundant balance. He didn't strain to see a specific number. He simply felt what it would feel like to see enough, to see more than enough, to see abundance. And he let that feeling saturate him before he opened his eyes and began his day. When he thought about his debts, which he did because they were real and they required action, he did not panic. He did not spiral into fear. Instead, he imagined himself making the final payment. He imagined the debt being cleared. He felt the relief of freedom from that burden. He assumed the end, not the problem. When he needed to make a purchase, instead of immediately thinking, "I can't afford this," he would pause and ask himself, "Would a wealthy man buy this?" Sometimes the answer was yes, and he bought it with confidence. Sometimes the answer was no, and he chose not to buy it, not from lack, but from abundance. Because a wealthy man doesn't buy everything. He buys what serves him, what brings him joy, what aligns with his vision. The decision comes from freedom, not from fear. Within 6 months, his entire financial situation had transformed. Money came to him from sources he had not anticipated. Debts were forgiven or restructured in ways that defied logic. Opportunities arose that allowed him to increase his income significantly, and through it all, he maintained his assumption. He never wavered. He never let the appearances to move him. He assumed wealth, and wealth appeared. This is what I want you to understand. The work is not in the outer world. The work is in your consciousness. You must stop using an imagination to rehearse poverty and start using it to assume wealth. You must stop reacting to appearances and start creating from consciousness. You must stop checking the mirror and start changing your face. This is where the work lies. not in changing the outer world, not in getting a better job or winning the lottery or finding some external solution. The work lies in changing your inner convictions. You must stop rejecting wealth in consciousness. You must stop saying, "I am not there yet." You must stop living in the consciousness of traveling toward wealth and start living in the consciousness of already being it. And this means you must become vigilant about your thoughts, your words, your reactions. You must catch yourself every time you assume lack, every time you say, "I can't afford it," every time you check your balance in fear, every time you imagine the worst. And you must consciously, deliberately choose a different assumption. You must replace the thought of lack with the thought of abundance. You must replace the fear with faith. You must replace the old assumption with the new. This is not easy at first. You have spent years, perhaps decades, rehearsing poverty. It has become your default, your habit, your automatic response. But you can change it. You can reprogram your consciousness. You can establish a new habit. It takes persistence. It takes vigilance. It takes commitment. But it can be done. And when you do it, when you truly establish wealth as your habitual state, the outer world will have no choice but to conform. Old money never says, "I will be wealthy." They say, "I am," and that is why they remain wealthy. Their assumption is present tense. Their consciousness is present tense. Their identity is present tense, and so must yours be. Now I'm going to give you a prize. Practice. This is not theory. This is not philosophy. This is instruction. Tonight before you sleep, you are going to assume wealth. Not tomorrow, not next week, tonight. And here is exactly how you will do it. You will lie down in your bed. You will close your eyes. You will let your body go completely still. Relax every muscle. Let go of every tension. Become as still as you can be. And then, in this state of physical immobility, you will construct a scene in your imagination. A scene that implies wealth is already yours. Do not imagine the process of getting it. Do not imagine applying for a job or receiving a check or winning something. Imagine the result. Imagine the end. See yourself doing something that you would only do if you were already wealthy. Perhaps you see yourself signing a check, a large check written easily, without hesitation, without fear. Feel the pen in your hand. Feel the weight of it. Hear the sound of your signature on the paper. Feel the calm satisfaction of knowing this is normal for you, natural for you. Or perhaps you imagine yourself walking through your home, a home that reflects prosperity. Feel the floors beneath your feet. Notice the quality of everything around you, the furniture, the light, the space, the beauty. Do not observe it as a visitor. Experience it as the fire owner, as someone who belongs there, as someone for whom this is home. Or imagine a friend congratulating you on your success. Hear their voice, feel their hand on your shoulder, see the look of genuine happiness in their eyes. Feel your own response. Not surprise, not disbelief, but simple gratitude and quiet joy. This is your life now. The specific scene does not matter. What matters is the feeling. You must feel the naturalness of already being wealthy. You must feel the relief, the calm, the satisfaction of it being done. Do not let your mind wander to, "But how will this happen?" Or "This isn't real yet." Those thoughts are the denial of the state. They are the old consciousness trying to reassert itself. Refuse them gently, firmly, persistently. Return to the feeling. Return to the scene. Saturate yourself in it. If your mind drifts, bring it back. If doubt arises, replace it with the feeling. Loop the scene if you need to. Repeat it over and over until it feels more real than your current circumstances. Until the imaginal act feels more vivid, more present, more true than the physical room around you. And then when you have reached that point where you are more in the imagined state than in the physical state, fall asleep. Let to yourself drift off while still feeling it, still seeing it, still being it. Now, let me give you some variations of this practice because different scenes will resonate with different people. Some of you may find it easier to imagine a conversation. If so, imagine someone you know congratulating you on your prosperity. Hear their voice clearly. Hear them say, "You've done so well. I'm so happy for you." Feel the warmth in their tone. Feel your own response. Not surprise, not disbelief, but simple gratitude and quiet acknowledgement. This implies that wealth is already yours. This implies that others recognize it. This implies that it is done. Others may find it easier to imagine a physical sensation. If so, feel the weight of a checkbook in your hand. Feel yourself writing a large check with ease, without hesitation, without concern about whether you can afford it. Feel the confidence in the gesture. Feel the naturalness of it. Or feel yourself walking through your home, a home that reflects prosperity. Feel the thick carpet beneath your feet. Feel the quality of the furniture as you sit. Feel the spaciousness around you. Make it sensory. Make it real. Some of you may prefer a single image. If so, see your bank statement showing an abundant balance. Do not strain to see the exact number. Simply see enough zeros to know that you are secure. See enough to feel relief flooding through you. See it and feel the way you would feel if this were your reality. Or see yourself handing your credit card to a cashier without any concern about whether the payment will go through. Feel the calm of knowing you are provided for. The key is this: whatever scene you choose, you must feel it. You must make it sensory. You must make it present. Do not observe yourself in the scene as though watching a movie. Be in the scene. See through your own eyes. Hear through your own ears. Feel through your own body. This is first-person experience, not third-person observation. You are not watching someone else be wealthy. You are being wealthy yourself. And when you do this, practice, do not rush it. Give yourself time. Allow yourself to sink into the feeling. Some nights the scene will come easily. You will slip into it effortlessly, and the feeling will be strong and vivid. Other nights you will struggle. Your mind will wander. Doubt will intrude. You will feel as though you are forcing it. Do not be discouraged. This is normal. The practice is not about perfection. It is about persistence. Even on the nights when it feels difficult, you are still impressing the assumption upon your subconscious. You are still planting the seed. Trust the process. This is prayer. This is creation. This is how you command reality. You are not asking for wealth. You are not begging for it. You are assuming it. You are occupying the due state. You are instructing your subconscious mind, which is the creative power within you, to accept this as fact. And the subconscious, having no ability to reject what you persistently impress upon it, will accept it. and having accepted it, it will bring it forth into your outer world. But you must persist. One night is not enough. 2 nights are not enough. You must make this your nightly practice until the assumption hardens into fact, until it becomes so natural to you that you cannot imagine being anything other than wealthy, until the state is no longer something you enter but something you are. How long will this take? That is the question everyone asks, and I tell you, it takes as long as it takes for the assumption to become natural to you. For some, this happens quickly. Within days or weeks, they feel the shift. The assumption takes root. It becomes their habitual state, and the outer manifestation follows swiftly. For others, it takes longer. They must persist for months, working each night to capture the feeling, fighting against years of contrary assumptions, slowly building the new state in consciousness. But whether it takes days or months, the principle remains the same. Persist until the assumption hardens into fact. Persist until it feels more real than your current circumstances. Persist until you cannot imagine being anything other than what you have assumed yourself to be. And I promise you this, if you persist, if you do not waver, if you remain faithful to your assumption despite all appearances to the contrary, it will manifest. It must. The law is absolute. The outer world has no choice but to conform to the inner conviction. It is only a matter of time, and time is simply the interval between assumption and manifestation. And during the day, as you move through your waking hours, you will reinforce this assumption. You will speak a new truth, not as affirmation in the shallow sense of repeating empty words, but as decree, as command. You will say aloud or silently, I am wealthy, not I will be, not I want to be, I am. At first, it will feel like a lie. Your mind will resist. Your circumstances will seem to contradict it. Your bank account will show a different number. Your bills will still be unpaid. Your job will still pay the same salary. And every part of you will want to say, this isn't true. I am not wealthy. I am lying to myself. But you must understand the truth is not determined by your senses. The truth is not determined by the outer world. The truth is determined by your assumption. Let me tell you exactly how to do this practice throughout your day. When you wake in the morning, before you check your phone, before you look at your email, before you do anything else, you will say to yourself, I am wealthy, I am abundant, I am provided for. You will say it with feeling. You will say it with conviction. You will say it as a statement of fact, not as a wish. And you will let that assumption set the tone for your entire day. When you go to your job, you will move through your work as a wealthy person moves through their work, not with drudgery, not with resentment, not with the consciousness of, I have to do this to survive, but with the consciousness of, I choose to do this. I am abundant. This work is one expression of my abundance, but it does not define my abundance. I am wealthy regardless of what this job pays me. When you make purchases, you will do so from abundance rather than from lack. If you buy something, you will feel the joy of having it, the naturalness of being able to afford it. If you choose not to buy something, you will feel the freedom of that choice, not the deprivation of being unable to afford it, but the discernment of choosing what truly serves you. When you interact with others, you will carry yourself as a person of substance. not with arrogance, not with pride, but with quiet confidence, with calm certainty, with the knowledge that you are the operant power in your own life, that you are wealthy in consciousness, and that the outer world is simply catching up to your inner conviction. When you encounter bills or debts, you will not panic. You will not spiral into fear. You will look at them calmly and say, I am wealthy. These are simply temporary appearances. They are the result of my old assumptions. My new assumption is creating a new reality. I am abundant. I am provided. For these obligations will be met, and you will feel the truth of it. You will feel the calm. You will feel the certainty throughout the day. Whenever I thought of lack arises, and it will arise many times, at first you will catch it. You will recognize it, and you will replace it immediately, consciously. Deliberately, you will say, no, that is the old assumption. I am wealthy. I am abundant. I am provided for. And you will return to the feeling of wealth. This is not positive thinking. This is not denial. This is conscious creation. You are programming your subconscious mind to accept a new assumption. You are establishing a new habitual state. And the more you do this, the more natural it becomes. At first, you will have to consciously correct your thoughts dozens of times a day. But gradually, the new assumption will take root. It will become automatic. It will become your new normal. And when it does, the outer world will have no choice but to reflect it. You are not lying. You are decreeing. You are commanding a new reality into being. Every time you say, I am wealthy, you are instructing your subconscious mind to accept it as fact. And the subconscious, being the womb of all creation, will birth into your outer world exactly what you plant in it. If you plant poverty, you will harvest poverty. If you plant wealth, you will harvest wealth. The law is impersonal. It does not judge. It does not question. It simply creates. Do not argue with appearances. When you look at your bank account and see a number that does not match your assumption, do not let that deny your claim. Understand that the outer is always the past made visible. It is the result of yesterday's assumptions, last week's assumptions, last year's assumptions. It is old. It is finished. It is done. Today, right now, you are assuming wealth, and tomorrow, the outer will begin to shift slowly. At first, perhaps, a small change here, a slight improvement there. But if you persist, if you do not waver, if you hold to your assumption as though your life depends on it, because it does, the outer will catch up. It must. And as you persist in your assumption, you will also revise your past. This may sound strange to you, but it is essential. You have rehearsed poverty for years. Every time you worried about money, every time you checked your balance in fear, every time you imagined worst-case scenarios, you were building a monument to lack in your consciousness. That monument must be dismantled, not through guilt, not through regret, but through revision. Revision is one of the most powerful tools I can give you, yet it is one of the least understood. Most people believe the past is fixed, unchangeable, set in stone. But I tell you that the past exists only in your memory, and memory is imagination. You are remembering selectively. You are interpreting events through the lens of your assumptions, and just as you created the memory, you can revise it. You can change the emotional charge. You can transform the meaning. You can rewrite your history. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, Before you do your imaginal act of assuming wealth, take a moment to review your day. Recall every moment where you felt lack, every anxious thought, every fearful reaction, every moment of "I can't afford this," every time you said or thought or felt anything that affirmed poverty. And now, revise it. Replay the scene in your mind, but this time feel the opposite. Imagine yourself calm, secure, abundant. Imagine yourself saying yes instead of no. Imagine yourself moving through the day with the ease of someone who knows they are provided for. Let me give you specific examples so you understand exactly how to do this. See yourself at the store looking at something you wanted but felt you could not afford. In the original scene, you walked away. You felt the sting of deprivation. You told yourself, "I can't afford that. I need to save my money. I don't deserve nice things." You reinforced lack with every thought and feeling. Now revise it. See yourself in that same store, looking at that same item. But this time, you feel calm. You feel abundant. You either purchase the item with joy, feeling the naturalness of having what you desire, or you choose not to. Purchase it, not because you cannot afford it, but because you simply do not want it. Perhaps it doesn't suit your taste. Perhaps you already have something similar. The key is that the choice comes from freedom, not from lack. Feel the difference. Feel the shift in consciousness. See yourself at work, stressed about bills. In the original scene, you sat at your desk feeling trapped, worried, burdened. You checked your bank balance on your phone and felt your stomach drop. You imagined the worst eviction, debt collectors, humiliation. You spiraled into fear. Now revise it. See yourself at that same desk, but this time you are calm. You are at peace. When the thought of bills arises, you smile gently to yourself and think, I am provided for. I am wealthy. All my needs are met. You feel the truth of it in your body. You feel the relief. You feel the inner knowing that you are taken care of, regardless of what the outer world currently shows. And you return to your work with a clear mind and a light heart to see yourself in conversation with a friend who mentions their own financial success. In the original scene, you felt envious. You felt inadequate. You compared yourself to them and found yourself lacking. You smiled and congratulated them, but inside you felt the bitter sting of "why not me?" Now revise it. See yourself in that same conversation, but this time you genuinely celebrate with your friend. You feel no envy because you know you are also wealthy. Perhaps your wealth has not yet appeared in your outer world, but in your consciousness, you are already prosperous. You are already secure. Your friend's success does not diminish you. It simply reflects the abundance that is available to all. You feel joy for them because you know that the same abundance is yours. Do this with every memory of lack. Go back over your day, your week, your month, your year. Find every moment where you affirmed poverty in thought, word, or feeling, and revise it. See yourself moving through those same moments as a wealthy person would move through them. Feel the difference. Feel the shift. Feel the new assumption taking root. This is not denial. This is not pretending that the original events did not happen. This is understanding that the events themselves are neutral. It is your interpretation of them, your emotional response to them that gives them power. By revising your interpretation, by changing your emotional response, You remove the power that those memories have been holding over you. You free yourself from the past. You create a new past that supports your new future. Some of you may think, but this is not real. This is not what actually happened. And I tell you, what actually happened is far less important than what you believe happened. Your beliefs create your reality. If you believe your past is a series of financial failures and limitations, that belief will continue to create financial failures and limitations in your future. But if you revise your past to be a series of abundance and provision, that new belief will create abundance and provision in your future. This is not denying reality. This is creating reality. You have been creating reality all along through your assumptions. You have simply been creating unconsciously, habitually, based on old patterns and inherited beliefs. Now I am teaching you to create consciously, deliberately, based on the state you desire to occupy. This is not denial. This is not ignoring reality. This is recreation. The past is not fixed. The past exists only in your memory, and memory is imagination. By revising the friend past, you are removing the emotional charge that has been feeding your poverty. You are undoing the damage. You are planting new seeds in the soil of your consciousness, and those seeds will grow into a new harvest. Do this every night. Revise your day. Revise your week. Revise your entire financial previsions. History if you must. See yourself always as wealthy, always secure, always provided for. See every moment of lack transformed into a moment of abundance. And as you do this, you will feel the old assumptions losing their grip. You will feel the new assumption taking root. You will feel yourself shifting, changing, becoming. The outer world will have no choice but to catch up, cannot do otherwise. For the outer world is not a separate thing. It is not independent. It is not governed by its own laws. It is governed by your consciousness. It is your consciousness pushed out, made visible, made tangible. Change your consciousness, and the outer world changes. This is law. This is truth. This is the principle by which all things are made. Now, let me tell you something that old money knows instinctively, but rarely speaks aloud. Wealth is not about money. It is about identity. It is about who you are, not what you have. When you see yourself as wealthy, when you identify as a wealthy person, when you move through the world with the consciousness of someone who belongs to prosperity, everything changes. Your decisions change, your relationships change, your opportunities change, your entire life reorganizes itself around your new identity. A wealthy person does not think like a poor person. He does not make the same choices. He does not see the world through the same lens. A wealthy person, when faced with an opportunity, does not immediately calculate whether he can afford it. He asks whether it aligns with his vision, whether it serves his purpose, whether it brings him joy. He operates from abundance, not from scarcity. And because he operates from abundance, abundance flows to him. A poor person, on the other hand, makes every decision from fear. Can I afford this? What if it doesn't work out? What if I lose what little I have? He sees risk everywhere. He sees limitation everywhere. He sees reasons why he cannot, should not, must not, and so his life reflects those limitations back to him. He remains stuck, not because the opportunities do not exist, but because he cannot see them. His consciousness of Poverty blinds him to the very things that would lift him out of poverty. This is why I tell you, you must change your identity. You must stop seeing yourself as someone who is trying to become wealthy and start seeing yourself as someone who is wealthy, not in the future. Now, in consciousness, you are already there. And when your identity shifts, everything else follows. Old money children are raised with this identity. From the moment they are born, they are told, shown, and immersed in the reality of wealth. They do not have to become wealthy. They already are. It is their inheritance not of money, but of consciousness. And that consciousness once assumed, once inhabited, once lived in, produces wealth in the outer world as naturally. As a tree produces fruit, you can claim that same inheritance tonight. It was never about bloodline. It was never about being born into the right family. It was always about consciousness. And consciousness is available to all. You can assume it. You can occupy it. You can live in it, and when you do, the universe will have no choice but to honor your assumption. But there is something else you must understand. The consciousness of wealth is not aggressive. It is not forceful. It is not desperate. It does not shout. It does not demand. It rests. There is a deep stillness at the heart of true prosperity, a knowing, a calm, an unshakable certainty that all is well, that all is provided, that there is nothing to fear. When you are in the consciousness of wealth, you do not wake up each morning anxious about money. You do not check your bank balance compulsively. You do not obsess over every dollar spent. You rest in the inner knowing that you are taken care of. And that rest, that inner peace, that stillness is the very frequency that attracts more wealth. Because wealth flows to those who are at ease, not to those who are in turmoil. Think about it. When you are desperate, when you are anxious, when you are grasping, you repel the very thing you seek. People sense your desperation. Opportunities close, doors shut. But when you are calm, when you are confident, when you rest in the knowing of your own security, people are drawn to you. Opportunities open, doors swing wide. The universe moves to accommodate your assumption. This is not mysticism in some vague, ethereal sense. This is practical. This is observable. A man who is at peace makes better decisions. He sees more clearly. He thinks more rationally. He does not act out of fear, and therefore he does not sabotage himself. A man who is anxious makes poor decisions. He sees through the lens of lack. He thinks reactively. He acts impulsively. And he creates more of what he fears. So, as you assume wealth, you must also assume peace. You must let go of the frantic energy that says, I must make this happen. I must force this. I must control every detail. You must surrender to the law. You must trust that your assumption, once firmly held, will produce its corresponding fact in the outer world. You must rest. This is what the scriptures mean when they say, be still and know that I am God. Be still. Stop the anxious striving. Stop the desperate seeking. Know that you are the creative power. Know that your consciousness is the only reality. Know that what you assume in consciousness must by law appear in your world, and rest in that knowledge. Let it be done unto you according to your assumption. I have seen so many people fail, not because they did not understand the law, but because they could not rest in it. They assumed for a moment, and Then they panicked. They looked at their circumstances, saw no change, and immediately doubted. They dropped the assumption and returned to fear. And in that moment, they undid all their work. Do not be like them. Assume and persist. Assume and rest. Assume and know that it is done. Now, as I bring this teaching to a close, I want to leave you with a truth that will either set you free or disturb you deeply, depending on where you are in your understanding. You are not separate from wealth. You are not separate from prosperity. You are not separate from abundance. You are the very consciousness that creates it. I am is the name of God, and you are I am. Whatever you attach to I am, you become. Whatever you assume after those two words, you experience. Let me say this in the plainest way possible. There is no power outside of you that grants or denies you wealth. There is no external force that must approve your prosperity. There is no cosmic accountant checking whether you have earned enough, suffered enough, or proven yourself worthy enough to receive abundance. All of that is illusion. All of that is the lie you have been taught to keep you in bondage. The only power that determines your experience is your own consciousness. The only thing standing between you and the wealth you desire is your assumption. If you assume you are poor, you will experience poverty. If you assume you are wealthy, you will experience wealth. It is that simple. It is that absolute. It is that impersonal. The law does not care about your story. It does not care about your past. It does not care about your excuses or your justifications. It cares only about your present assumption. What are you assuming now? That is what you will experience. 4. Too long you have assumed poverty, lack, limitation. You have said, I am struggling. I am broke. I am behind. I am not enough. And the universe, being nothing more than a faithful servant to your assumptions, has said, yes, so be it. As you have assumed, so shall it. And you have lived in the reflection of those words. Every morning, you wake up and immediately check your bank balance, and in that checking you affirm your lack. Every time you say, I can't afford that, you decree poverty. Every time you worry about money, you rehearse scarcity. Every time you compare yourself to others and feel the sting of inadequacy, you reinforce your smallness. You have been creating your poverty with your every thought, your every word, your every feeling. And I wonder why it persists. But tonight that ends. Tonight you make a different choice. Tonight you claim a different assumption. Tonight you step into a different state. From this moment forward, you will no longer beg for permission to be wealthy. You will no longer wait for circumstances to change before you change your consciousness. You will no longer postpone your assumption until the evidence appears. You will command it. You will occupy the state of wealth in your imagination with such conviction, with such persistence, with such absolute certainty that the outer world will have no choice but to reflect it back to you. You will feel yourself to be wealthy before a single dollar appears, and in that feeling, you will be wealthy. For consciousness is the only reality, and the outer world is only its shadow. And I must warn you, this will not always be easy. There will be days when your resolve weakens. There will be moments when the evidence of your senses screams so loudly that you are tempted to abandon your assumption and return to the old familiar state of lack. There will be people in your life who do not understand what you are doing. Who will tell you that you are foolish, that you are deluding yourself, that you need to face reality? But I tell you, persist. When the doubt comes, acknowledge it and return to your assumption. When the fear arises, feel it and return to your assumption. When the outer world seems to contradict your claim, remember that the outer world is always showing you your past, not your present. Your present assumption is creating your future, and if you persist in it, if you remain faithful to it, if you refuse to be moved by appearances, the future you are creating will eventually become your present. This is not a one-time practice. This is a way of life. This is a fundamental shift in how you see yourself and how you move through the world. You are not adding a technique to your existing consciousness. You are transforming your consciousness entirely. You are dying to the old self and being reborn as the new. And death and rebirth are not comfortable processes, but they are necessary if you wish to truly change. The rest is simply time. The rest is simply the interval between assumption and manifestation, between the imaginal act and the physical fact. But the work is done now. In consciousness, the seed is planted now. The harvest is certain. You need only persist. You need only remain faithful to your assumption. You need only refuse to be moved by the evidence of your senses, by the opinions of others, by the appearance of delay. Some of you will see results quickly. Within days or weeks, you will notice shifts. Money will come from unexpected sources. Opportunities will present themselves. Doors that were closed will suddenly open. You will feel as though the universe is conspiring to support you. And it is because the universe is nothing more than your own consciousness externalized. As you change within it, changes without. Others may take longer. You may persist for months before you see dramatic outer change. But I promise you this, if you truly assume the state, if you live in it, if you make it your habitual consciousness, it must appear. It cannot do otherwise. The law is absolute. The outer world has no choice but to conform to the inner conviction. It is only a matter of time, and during that time, during that interval, you must not judge the process. You must not compare your journey to another's. You must not allow impatience or frustration to creep in. Simply persist. Simply return each night to your practice. Simply assume each day that you are wealthy. Simply refuse to let the outer world dictate your inner state. Old money does not doubt. Old money does not waver. Old money does not question whether it will be provided for. Old money simply is, and now so are you. You are wealthy in consciousness. You have assumed the state. You have occupied the throne. The outer world is simply catching up. Let me tell you one final story before I release you to your practice. I knew a woman who struggled with money her entire life. She grew up poor. She married poor. She raised her children poor. Poverty was all she knew. But in her later years, she discovered this teaching. She learned about the law of assumption. She learned that consciousness creates reality, and she decided at the age of 67 to test it. She had nothing to lose. Her husband had passed. Her children were grown. She lived alone in a small apartment on a fixed income that barely covered her expenses. She had no prospects of increase, no inheritance coming, no winning lottery ticket, nothing in her outer world suggested that her situation would ever change. But she had something far more powerful. She had her imagination. Every night she practiced what I have taught you tonight. She imagined herself wealthy. She felt the relief of abundance. She assumed the consciousness of prosperity. And every day, she moved through her world as though she were already the woman she wanted to be. She held her head high. She dressed with care. She gave of the little she had with generosity. She spoke of her future with certainty. For 6 months, nothing changed in her outer circumstances. Not one thing. Her income remained the same. Her apartment remained the same. Her bank account showed no increase. But she did not waver. She persisted in her assumption. She lived in the state. She refused to let appearances move her. And then in the 7th month, everything shifted. A distant relative she had not spoken to in decades contacted her. This relative had become very wealthy through a business venture, and feeling moved to share that wealth, decided to provide a substantial monthly income to several family members, including her. When I say substantial, I mean more than she had earned in an entire year during her working life. It came every month, reliably, abundantly, without condition. She lived the remaining years of her life in comfort she had never known. She traveled. She gave generously to her children and grandchildren. She experienced ease and peace and joy. And when I last spoke with her just months before she passed, she said to me, "I wasted so many years living in lack. I wish I had known this truth sooner, but I am grateful I discovered it when I did. These have been the happiest years of my life. You do not need to waste any more years. You have the truth now. You know the principle now. You understand the law. Now what you do with this knowledge is entirely up to you. You can dismiss it. You can file it away as an interesting idea. You can return to your old assumptions and your old patterns. Or you can claim it. You can live it. You can become it. You are not broken. You were never broken. You were simply asleep to your own power. You were simply living in an assumption that did not serve you. But now you are awake. Now you know. Now you understand. Consciousness is the only reality. Assumption is the only creative power. And you right now, in this moment, have the ability to assume any state you desire and live in it until it becomes your physical fact. So assume wealth tonight. Feel it. Inhabit it. Breathe it in. Let it fill every corner of your being. And tomorrow assume it again. And the day after that and the day after that. Persist in it. Make it your habitual state. Make it your new identity. And watch as the universe rearranges itself to honor what you have claimed in consciousness. Do not wait for permission. Do not wait for a sign. Do not wait for circumstances to align. Assume it now. Occupy the state now. Become it now in consciousness. And trust that the outer world being, nothing more than a faithful reflection of the inner will, conform. It must. It has no choice. This is law. If this truth has stirred something within you, if you feel the shift beginning, if you sense that something deep and fundamental has changed, then I ask you to do something. Leave a comment below. Not for me, not for anyone else, for yourself. Declare it. Write the words, "I am wealthy." Let that be the first seed planted in the garden of your new reality. Let it be the first outward expression of your inner assumption. And as you write those words, feel them, mean them, know them to be true. Let your declaration be your commitment to this new way of living. Let it be your promise to yourself that you will no longer accept poverty consciousness. Let to it be your first act of claiming what is rightfully yours. Not by birthright, not by luck, not by earning, but by assumption, by divine right of consciousness. And if you wish to continue this journey, if you wish to hear more of these teachings, if you wish to deepen your understanding of the law and learn to apply it in every area of your life, then subscribe, not because you need me, but because you have decided to remember who you are. You have decided to wake up to your own creative power. You have decided to stop living as a beggar and start living as the God you were always meant to be. Go. Now, the inheritance is yours. It has always been yours. You simply forgot to claim it. But tonight you remember. Tonight you assume. Tonight you become. The old money principle is no longer a secret kept by the few. It is your principle. It is your truth. It is your life. Assume wealth. Persist in that assumption. And let the world reflect back to you the glory of what you have claimed in consciousness. I am wealthy. You are wealthy. We are all wealthy in the only place that matters, in the creative consciousness that is the source and substance of all things. That is the teaching. That is the truth. That is the way. Thank you.